So we now have our panel discussion on ecology and conservation of the environment. I'd like to invite Mr. Chetan Sanghvi to join us here. He is, of course, studied at the IIT in Kharagpur, and I think the wonderful aspect of his contribution to this will also have a reflection on the fact that he was born into the Jain community and has an amazingly scientific mind. I'd also like to take this opportunity to invite Dr. Rudi Jansma from the Netherlands to join us here. The format that we'll follow is each of the speakers can speak for about 5 minutes, after which we can have a discussion between them for about 15 minutes, followed by a very quick question-answer session. We'll have to be a bit wicked about timing because we're running against it now. Dr. S.R. Maley, if you'll please join us, and of course, Ms. Tine Vekemans from Belgium. So, with that, we have our nice panel together, the first panel discussion of the Anuvrat International Conference. And haven't we forgotten something? Om Arham. Okay, so just to start off, I'd request Mr. Chetan Sanghvi to please say a few words for 5 minutes. I'm afraid I'm going to be a little bit particular about the timing factor now. And I think the whole international exposure that you've had, the fact that you are chairman and managing director of a technologies company, and that you've been doing a lot of angel investing, which means analyzing projects and really studying what they're all about and their potential. So the potential of the work you do in the context of ecology and conservation would be greatly appreciated.
Life, humans, and ecology. And the main part of this presentation is to bring in light how big a human is and how big life is. And I would like to start with this particular earth, water, and fire. Now, one master said, earth, water, and fire has life. And for an amateur scientist like me, it sounds like that's a crazy idea. Have you ever heard of anybody telling fire having life? And then you think a little bit more and you say fire represents combustion, combustion represents burning of fossil fuels, and fossil fuels means burning some generation of carbon dioxide. Wait, was this master thinking beyond what we ever thought? Interestingly, to a monk whom we, Acharya Tulsi, 60 years ago, decided, let me see the sacred text, not from the narrow meaning, but from a holistic standpoint. And we have seen so many books subsequently written which talk about what the actual interpretation of the ancient text rather than the actual. So with that, let me give you go a little fast. I know the time is little, and move fast. I'm going to talk today a little bit about time scale. From a billion years, which is about 3 × 10⁻16 seconds, to a picosecond. Just to give you an idea what a picosecond is, you know, the amount of time light takes to travel, little more than your hair, size of your hair. So just to give you an idea what a picosecond is, okay? Let's see what we are. This Earth is believed to be 5 billion years old. Of this, life started almost 4 billion years ago. And I would like to then point out to that 3 billion number, people, poor microbes, 3 billion years ago were generating energy for whom? For humans like us. 3 billion years ago. The amount of energy which has been created over 3 billion years ago. And if you go down the channel, plant actually occurred significantly later in the life cycle, which today are one of the key factors this thing. Look at the end. Finally came what is called genus Homo. This is the early human beings. This is not exactly human beings, but this is the early beings. We can barely see in the timeline genus Homo. And then there is that last line, where the human beings are. Just makes you feel, we think we are so large, but where we are in the time scale, it just brings some reality back to us. Let me expand that a little bit. 5 million primates. Some intelligent primate decided that walking is better than crawling. And then there was a fundamental change. Somebody figured out, oh my God, if I can use a stick, I can be a lot more powerful. There became another. Somebody figured out, if I can use a stone, I can be even more powerful. And finally, the humans, just 200,000 years old. Now let us look at the 200,000 years. Most of it went in Stone Age. Very little agriculture age. Just to put a point, because this is a very interesting point which you find in Acharya Pragnaji's book, that Adeshwar Bhagwan was actually born about 10,000 years ago. And he has done a lot of research to come to that conclusion. Bronze Age, Iron Age. And then there is that last age in red, I call the intelligent men. So let's talk about this little intelligent man. Intelligent men started quite intelligently. The first was the masters. The masters actually, and I'm referring to Mahavir Swami and Parshvanath Bhagwanji here, save the earth and all life forms. If you really go at, they never talked only about humans. They always talked about universal ahimsa. What we are talking today is ahimsa for human beings. They always talked about universal ahimsa. Then came the philosophers like Arya Bhattacharya, Pythagoras, and this thing. Their mission was to understand nature. Then came the real scientists. Their mission was to take advantage of nature. And then came a great man, considered the greatest scientist ever. There's an argument whether Newton was the greatest or Einstein was the greatest, but most scientists today believe Newton was the greatest. And the reason I bring that point is what Newton did, not the physical laws, but more so the language of mathematics. I can talk a little bit about language with Mahavir Swami used and the difficulty he had, but by bringing out the language of mathematics, things could be presented in a very precise manner. That allowed a new generation, a new avatar of people whose mission was to exploit the nature. Started with industrial revolution and never looked back. Frankly, they are engineers like me. Let me look at the last century. Electronic age, electronic systems, and let's look at a little bit more. Look at this slide. When I started the electronics, the mainframes were only 3 million units in the world. PCs and laptops, 1 billion units a year. Mobile and internet, 10 billion units. And now we are talking about Internet of Things, 100 billion units. Now, I want to ask a simple question. How many of you use WhatsApp? Quite a few. How many people send photographs through WhatsApp? Quite a few. Next time when you send a photograph, just think, every time when you send a photograph, you cut a branch of a tree and burnt it. And I have calculations to back that up. That's the amount of energy we use. Today, close to 10 to 12% of the entire electricity produced in the world is used by internet. Can you believe my simple iPhone? How much water it takes to build an iPhone? Close to 500 gallons of water. A gallon is take approximately 4 liters. So just gives you an idea. Yeah, it's just a small iPhone. But what does it take to make an iPhone? And now we're talking about 100 billion units. So you can imagine how things are changing. We love to make and grow bigger and bigger. And in what short time frame? Remember 5 billion years and look at this number of years. I want to put something very interesting. Population of the earth. When Adeshwar Bhagwan was born, that's about 10,000 years ago, there was hardly. Nature was everything. The nature was able to take care of everything. And look at the population of the earth right now and how it has shot up. It's around 7.2 billion right now. This is a very interesting domain. The total weight of human beings along with all the domestic animals was only 0.1% at that point of time. That means 99.9 was owned by other mammals. Look at what is it today. 97% of the weight is now controlled by humans, and only 3% of the entire weight is by mammals. Just gives you an idea, what are we done? Volume of water on Earth, that's total water. Volume of fresh water. And if you see this small dot below, that's the only fresh water which we can use. And that is not enough if we keep on growing the way which we are growing. Just to give you, we are in the 6th total 140,000 species, life forms go extinct per year right now. 800 animals have gone extinct this thing. Over 5 billion years of history has seen fast mass extinctions. This is the 6th mass extinction, and this is completely human driven. Carbon monoxide, which is the cause of global warming and people are talking about it, has gone up from 578 million tons in 1700 to 766 now. And this is, and it's expected to be more than 800 right now. I talked about internet. I'll ask you a very simple question. And this is where Anuvrat can come in. We have most of us have a refrigerator at home. What consumes more power, your iPhone or refrigerator? I think the answer should be obvious, right? Huh? The answer is iPhone. You won't believe it, right? One would not believe this. And this is where the hope is. Why is this hope? When he started the movement, if he had talked about the green earth, it would not have been fashionable. Frankly speaking, if he had talked 60 years ago about saving the earth, violence was more critical to be talked about at that point of time. But what did he do? He had realized the value that this natural resources was being destroyed. So if you look at the Anuvrats, he has pointed out key things. Don't consume more than what you need. He had realized it, even long time back, that if we keep on consuming the rate at which we are consuming, this is an unsustainable society. Some engineers who cause this great material havoc, like people like me, can use the ingenuity to reverse this trend, and we have to do that. It's, however, needs global commitment, awareness. And awareness is the most important thing, again, which Acharya Tulsi ji talked a lot about. And of course, sacrifice and discipline. Respect, equality, and right of all living. Fundamental to not only Jain, it's actually fundamental to almost all religious beliefs, including earth, water, and fire. And with this, I think I've taken more time and let somebody else speak.
Dr. Rudi Jansma is from the Netherlands, but actually he's from Rajasthan, because that's where he lives. I have been told that after reciting the mantras and trying to imbibe the philosophy, I should become an honorary Jain, but the truth is he's the one who actually qualifies for that post. He has spent a lot of time and effort thinking about the philosophies of Anuvrat and also Jainism at large. He has studied philosophy and Sanskrit and is really interested in people's attitude towards nature and ecology, especially in the non-Western cultures. So I hand over to Dr. Jansma.
Now, first one remark. I think that you said I have 5 minutes. I have more material. The material that I have here is for more than an hour, so I propose that about 1 minute before you want me to stop, you wave, and then I'll stop.
You're making me the villain of the piece.
Yeah, I make you responsible. Okay. No, but I have many things to talk about, and the first thing I wanted to say that we are a small sect sitting here. The Anuvrat movement, the Therapanthy Jains of the Shvetambars. And I think that we should also have conferences that unite Jains, because Jains have things to tell to the world. Not only to each other, to small groups sitting together, cozily meeting the same people all the time. and Jains should do something. Now, Jainism is a very ancient religion, and I have put this photograph here, taken from a Digambar temple in Jaipur, where you see a kalpa tree. Now, the concept of kalpa tree is very crucial to Jainism. I wrote down in my text here, once upon a time, people lived in harmony with nature. They lived in nature. They accepted what nature gave them, were part of nature, and were intelligent. And they did not harm any creature, not even a tree or a plant. Their minds had not yet become polluted by greed, and the people used their natural intelligence to think positively and to gain knowledge and wisdom. This story goes on for a long time. What I want to say is that in the Jain idea, I don't know, do I have to talk here or both? What, it doesn't matter? No, it is fine. I can stand like this, but I shouldn't move it then. So, can you show next tree? You see, the kalpa tree is a tree that you see in temples, and of many different times. There are 10 different times, and the story is that in the very past, people were non-violent, and they accepted only what they got from nature. And there were trees in the forest and in the landscape that provided everything. Now, this is a tree that provides jewels. And give the next tree, then you will see something else. There are trees that provide clothing for the people. And the Jains believed that in the days of the Kulankaras, in the millions of years ago, people lived like this. Nowadays, of course, I don't think there were ever saris hanging down in trees. And there is even one with musical instruments and fantasies, synthesizers hanging down from trees. I don't think that was the case. But what I want to say, of course, is the idea is that everything that we actually need in life is available for us through nature. We don't need anything else. And even today, we know in the Amazon region and other places on Earth, there are people who are living completely on what nature offers them. But the Jains say that people also had a higher ethics and philosophy than we have today. So contrary to the Western idea that we were hunters and gatherers, and we were beating each other up, and we were killing each other for competition, and we were killing animals and so on, the Jain idea is, in the Jain anthropology, is that we were peaceful originally. Maybe, there are more of these pictures. You can go quickly through them. This is the one with, what is it? Oh, here also some saris are hanging. Flowers. There's one for ornaments. I don't know the sequence. Oh, this has fruits and go on. Anyway, there were 10 different of these types. Oh, here you see the musical instruments. You see a trumpet. Go back. Please. One back. You see a trumpet hanging in the tree, and you see a hornet, and a violin is hanging somewhere. Of course, it's a kind of interpretation, but the idea is there that even in those days when we had no technology, no modern technology, there was already culture. There was music, there was the understanding of beauty, there was the understanding of philosophy, there was the understanding of ethics. All these things were already there. Whereas in the West, we tend to think that ethics and all the good things of culture are just byproducts of the modern development of the human mind. Jains think the other way around. And I think that this, we ourselves, everyone who is sitting here, according to the Jain doctrine, is an incarnation of these people who lived then thousands of years ago, or maybe 1 million of years ago. It is just you and me who are sitting here now, have been sitting under that tree, theoretically, of course. We still have that feeling within us. We can still understand that. Next picture, oh yeah, this one. Here you see the 6 leishash, the 6 salt colors, and the black one down there wants to cut the whole tree at once. He has an axe and he wants to cut the stem, and is that not much like what we are today? We want to take everything at once, have everything at once. We have all the wood and we have all the unripe fruits, but then after that we'll have nothing left and we will all die. Now, it's not enough time to go into all the 6 things, but the last one, the white one sitting on the left, he is the best one. He is the monk. He is only accepting what is given by nature, the ripe fruits that are falling down from the trees. So they believe in the idea of karma, that whatever you get as a human being, and also animal and other being, has a cause in the past. It is karma. You can go to, a very short word I will give on this. You saw these 6 leshas, and these are called the 6 thought colors. Now, modern clairvoyant investigation, the giants also recognize clairvoyance as something that develops in monks and people who are serious, and is kind of a little bit higher state of development. It is not yet omniscience, but it is a part of what the human being can be. It is a particular karma that we are not clairvoyant, but there are people in the modern world who have some clairvoyance. And they have found out that every living being, every human being, has these thought colors. You show a few more pictures. I cannot go deep into it, but if you could see each other with clairvoyant eyes, you would perhaps see something like this. Next one. Here you see some people, I don't have to give details, but you see that some of these are very dark and with red arrows and evil, and others are very subtle and yellow. And you can imagine that every human being at this very moment sitting in this lecture hall, if we could see it like that, would be surrounded by his own colors or her own colors. And of course, you would expect that somebody who leads a noble life and a self-controlled life would have these more beautiful colors. Of course, many books have been written about that. Then, giant ecology can be approached from many different angles, and one of the angles is that in the West, ecology is mainly the study of living beings living together by chance in particular places, trying to compete and to live together in the best possible way, thus forming an ecosystem. So everyone is there for himself alone. But in the giant point of view, things are a little bit different. Living beings are incarnated souls. We have a soul, a jiva, that comes back time after time after time again in the form of a living being, a human being, or any being, a plant, an animal, or even in the water, water beings, fire beings, all these things in nature, also natural forces, belong to what is alive. So the idea of Western, I see you coming, the idea of Western ecology is different because the giants go from the fact that there are living beings who have a purpose of becoming enlightenment and expressing everything that is inherent in their soul already. So that is very different from the Western approach who look to today only. Then is the doctrine of karma. Now you know much about it. Everything is cause and effect. There is nothing without a reason that comes from consciousness. That is a giant doctrine. Whereas in the West we have still the idea that everything goes by chance. And if you can get a better place for yourself by pushing somebody else away, you do it. Jainism is opposite. And Jainism should talk like that to the world. Then there is the practice. One of the practice is aparigraha. Aparigraha is that it has been said several times, is that we try to live in a way that we use as little things that are not necessary. I mean, things that are not necessary we shouldn't use at all, but we should do studies to what is actually needed for humanity and what are actually just gadgets that cost a lot of burden to the planet. And I was also thinking that young giants who are going to be students, they should be stimulated, or I hope they will be interested, to do studies like biology, ecology, and also studies in the direction of Gemini trade is, of course, Gemini is a good example of a Jain who does something for the benefit of nature, for the benefit of ecology. Now, many young Jains could, instead of studying commerce and diamonds and things, could also go into biology and into those things that are important.
I was behaving like a student because I was so busy taking notes of what you were saying. It was difficult to realize where time was going. I had to be prompted by the prompters who keep an eye on the clock, because we do have an evening target to achieve. Dr. Jansma, that was very, very inspiring. And I think that bit about the young students actually being scientifically educated and thinking like that, because your presentation was mesmerizing for just that reason. There were such tangible things there. Dr. Shantaram Maley is our next speaker, and of course, his qualification is very unique. Again, very, very significant. When you saw the trees that were shown to us earlier, what were they bearing? They were bearing the fruits for us human beings to be able to be self-sufficient in nature. And his study is in agronomy. So I hand over to him with that.
Thank you very much. Let me take you to a dump yard, actual garbage situation in India. That will be somewhat eye-opener. And then I'll tell you the history and also the geography and also the future as to where we are. First, let me announce that we are lucky to have this particular auspicious program. Yesterday, we have completed a full 14 years of the law enactment about this solid waste management in India. It was promulgated on 25th September 2000. So 14 years, Ramji has returned from Banwas, and then I don't know what did he find, if Bharatji managed it or not, but we are managing the garbage as it was 14 years back, without touching it or without trying to see it, okay? This is also 20 years have been completed when there was a so-called flood in Surat on 24th September 1994 with a 10-inch rain in 10 hours time. That Surat city became a great sambar where the animal, food and all kind of living beings were floating in the garbage. That resulted into the so-called plague and brought a world shame to India. So I take you to a 4-minute video of actual garbage scenario. Can you please put on the video, 4 minutes, Dr. Maley?
गोराई, मुंबई का एक डंपिंग ग्राउंड। 30 सालों से लगातार इकट्ठा हुए कचरे ने यहां लगभग 80 फुट ऊंचे महाकाय पहाड़ का रूप ले लिया था। लेकिन दिसंबर 2003 में इस डंपिंग ग्राउंड के 1 हेक्टेयर क्षेत्रफल में एक प्रयोग हुआ। कचरे के पहाड़ को जमीन तक उतार दिया गया और नई जमीन के लिए तरसती म्युनिसिपैलिटी को फिर से जमीन उपलब्ध कराई गई। कीचड़ में कमल खिलाने जैसे इस काम को सिर्फ 60 दिनों में अंजाम दिया बिरजू मुंद्रा की मेहनत और डॉक्टर SR माले की वैज्ञानिक सूझबूझ ने।
माले साहब, मुझे तो ये चमत्कार ही लगता है, इतने बड़े ऊंचे कचरे के पहाड़ को आप जमीन पे कैसे ले आए?
ये बॉम्बे हाई कोर्ट के ऑर्डर से हुआ। बॉम्बे हाई कोर्ट में पिटीशन जो चल रही थी लोगों की कि ये कचरा बहुत बढ़ रहा है, खतरनाक हो गया है, इसका वास्तविक प्रैक्टिकल हल निकालिए।
तो किया कैसे? ये कैसे होता है?
कुछ आपने डाला, ये बगैर सोर्स एग्रीगेटेड करके उन्होंने डाला था।
तो ये पूरा मिक्स कचरा था?
मिक्स कचरा था।
क्या क्या चीजें हैं इसमें?
अब इसमें जो है खाने पीने की चीज थी, चिथड़ा, टेक्सटाइल था, घास फूस था, टायर थे, रबर थे और कुछ पत्थर भी थे। काफी कुछ पत्थर आते हैं जहाँ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट होता है कचरे का, क्योंकि वजन बढ़ाना है गाड़ी का।
अच्छा।
सो इसको सबसे पहले हमने सैनिटाइज किया, और जो ये सैनिटाइजेशन किया ये केवल नेचुरल प्रोडक्ट से किया, हर्बल हमने यूज किया,
केमिकल नहीं किया आपने?
केमिकल नहीं, जिससे कि कोई बीमारी ना होवे और कोई महामारी ना हो जाए, नहीं तो बिरजू और हमको जेल जाना पड़ता। फिर हमने सब एंजाइम जो है बैक्टीरिया के, क्यों कचरे में प्रोटीन भी है, सेलुलोज भी है, शुगर भी है, फैट भी है, तो हम अलग अलग कंसोर्शियम का एक मिक्सचर बना के उसमें डाल देते हैं। ये बैक्टीरिया अपना अपना काम करने लगेंगे।
तो ये बैक्टीरिया कैसे काम करता है?
बैक्टीरिया का मैं एक सही उदाहरण दूं तो दूध का एक एग्जांपल लेता हूँ, दूध और दही। 1 किलो आप दूध को उबालिए, एक में आप डाल दीजिए जामन, एक में मत डालिए, और 4 घंटे बाद दोनों बर्तन को देखिए, आपने जिसमें वो राइट बैक्टीरिया डाल दिया था जामन, जो कि लैक्टोबैसिलस है, वो दही बन गया, फर्स्ट क्लास मतलब हो गया। दूसरा गिलास है वो स्पाइल्ड मिल्क हो गया, सॉर मिल्क,
जहरीला हो गया,
जहरीला हो गया, क्योंकि जो अनवांटेड बैक्टीरिया है
वो घुस गए,
वो उनको मतलब किसी कैरियर की जरूरत नहीं है, वो हवा में है। उनको जहां लिक्विड मीडियम दिखा वही एंट्री मार लेता है हाँ? लेकिन डिसिप्लिन बैक्टीरिया जो है उसको आपने को बोलना पड़ता है कि ये इसमें काम करो। तो जहाँ अच्छे बैक्टीरिया ने सीट सब ऑक्यूपाई कर ली, जैसे ये इतने सब है, इमेजिन दे आर ऑल बैक्टीरिया, दे हैव ऑल ऑक्यूपाइड द सीट्स, नाउ नो अदर बैक्टीरिया कैन कम, नो बैड पर्सन कैन कम। क्योंकि वो दूसरे में राइट बैक्टीरिया नहीं बैठा हुआ था, so all those unsocial bacteria they got into that and they spiled it
दूसरे दूध में।
so ये सब हमने पोस्ट फैक्टो
उस डंपिंग ग्राउंड में सही बैक्टीरिया डाला।
हाँ जी, सही बैक्टीरिया का इनोकुलेशन कर दिया। एंड डोंट किल फ्लाइज, मक्खी जो है
काम की चीज है।
2 मक्खी 5 दिन में 70,000 बच्चे पैदा करती है।
बाप रे।
वो छोटे छोटे बच्चे जो हैं वो सब खा लेते हैं, मीट फिश ये वो।
अच्छा, जो रह जाता है।
हाँ, जो रह जाता है फूड में है, जो प्रोटीन है।
देखिए मक्खी मेरे पास भी आ रही है। हाँ। मक्खी ने सुन ली आपकी बात, वो फौरन आई, उसको लगा यार ये आदमी मेरी तारीफ कर रहा है।
तारीफ कर रहा है। सो ये मक्खी जो है बहुत बड़ा रोल अदा करती है इसको कपड़े को कंपोस्टिंग करने में। और ये जो बैक्टीरिया थे जो मैंने बोले, करीब 4 सप्ताह में वो सारे कचरे का विघटन करके उन्हें मिट्टी समान बना दिया,
मिट्टी जैसा बना दिया पक्षियों के द्वारा।
मक्खी और बैक्टीरिया दोनों मिलकर काम करते हैं। जैसे जैसे इसकी कुकिंग करते गए, मिट्टी जो है नीचे चली गई, कंपोस्ट नीचे चला गया, प्लास्टिक और रैक्स एंड टेक्सटाइल बाहर आता गया, उसको बाहर निकाला, क्लीन अप करके भेज दिया रिसाइकलर के पास,
रिसाइकलिंग कर दिया।
इस तरह से उसको पूरा
खत्म कर
दिया।
कितना समय लगा आपको ये
60 डेज में पूरा किया। सो दिस वाज समथिंग जो पोस्ट फैक्टो जो प्रायश्चित है, legacy waste. Now I'll just give you in 2 minutes as to where are we sitting as far as the garbage is concerned in India. We are generating 452 gram per person per day average of this country. So we are generating 170,000 ton waste per day from our 37.7 crore urbanites, which is living in 424 municipal corporations. What all we have, well, there's again a very funny situation as to why India is lagging behind now by 30 years from the European countries. The reason is, after the Surat flood, there was a bad incident which happened in Bangalore where 400 dogs, they entered poultry houses and killed about 1,000 birds. This was again in 1995, 20 years back. There emerged a petition in the Supreme Court of India that municipal bodies must be told to manage the garbage properly. When this petition came for hearing and judgment in 1998, Justice Kuldeep Nayyar, the Chief Justice of India, then for 15 minutes he kept on in a silence mode, and at the end he says judgment in this case is not possible. Why? Because Baba Ambedkar ji has forgotten to write about the solid waste responsibilities and roles in the Constitution of India. Forget about that. The planners, world level planners of Charles Correa and others who planned our city of Chandigarh, Gandhinagar and Navi Mumbai, they planned everything, mandir, masjid, gurdwara, prayer hall. But there was funeral grounds also. But there was no mention of the solid waste disposal as to what will happen to it. Now we had to pass through all this, get into the rule making, which took 10 years from 92 to 2002, and again 5 years to find out the money from where it will come. Now for the first time in the history, a Prime Minister of India has taken an oath on the river Ganges that he will clean up all these cities from the garbage menace, and let us see There is a 33,000 crore rupees project program which government of India people are making. We are contributing into that very actively so that we can clean up our all cities and get away from the dirty Indians, dirty cities and dirty people. Thank you very much.
Oh, Marham, that was really wonderful, and what a great reminder of how thought changers can make real change. The program that you showed us, well, I can just say it's kind of scary having some empty chairs, huh? Okay. May I invite Miss Tine Vekemans to share a few words with us. She is from Belgium, and just now we were talking about Gemini Corp and the good work they are doing. They are also from Belgium. And tomorrow, the performers who are going to be there post the conference, the musicians, they have just recently performed at the Belgian embassy. So, well, let's just say that your words carry a lot of weightage here because we're giving extra significance to your country.
How lovely. Thank you very much for that. All right, I have a presentation, I guess. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you for the introduction and all the kind words. I also want to sincerely thank the organizers and sponsor for making this possible, for making this meeting of religion, science, and activism possible. I was thinking of what to talk about a few months ago, sitting in my office at the university where I do research but also teach. And I was thinking maybe I should start from one of the Anuvrats and then work from there. But then one of our 19-year-old students came in for feedback after an exam. And we got talking, what are you going to do this summer? Or what are you working on? And I said, well, I'm thinking on what I'm going to say at a conference on Jainism and ecology. And she looked at me as only 19-year-old students can look, with one eyebrow slightly raised. I said, what link is there between the two? I said, what, between Jainism and ecology? And she said, well, no, between religion and ecology, actually. And I said, okay, maybe this is a good way in. Maybe I should take a few steps back and start my talk with my student, but also here, from the broad question of what ecology and religion links together, what they can do for each other. So, as we all know, this day and age, we not only suffer from global warming, diminishing ozone layer, pollution, also defecting politicians, drastic decline in biodiversity, but also from a lot of social inequality, which in turn makes the environmental problems worse and is made worse by the environmental problems. The idea that I want to start from is this picture here. A worldview called anthropocentrism, which puts man above everything else, which is very common, especially in Western thought, but I fear that we may have globalized it in some ways. In ecology, there's two ways of looking at this. You have a part of ecologists that says, look, we can make this into a sustainable system, as long as we keep on innovating, have the right technologies, and maybe have some critically placed protection schemes. These are called shallow ecologists. On the other hand, there's a category called deep ecologists who say, no, well, we're not going to make it with technological innovations, important as they are. What we need is to radically change people's viewpoints from anthropocentrism, and maybe the related egocentrism, to a more biocentric or ecocentric, and here the eco stands for ecosystem, approach. I tend to agree with these people on a personal note, but this worldview is not the only approach possible to the question of our ecological problems today. I thought when I was, well, a lot younger than now, I thought that it wouldn't be such a problem. I thought that if people would get the right information, if you tell someone, look, if you're going to go to the store, it's 5 kilometers, it's a lot better for the environment if you take your bicycle instead of your car, I thought people would make the logical choice. Now, I think by now, tens of environmental conferences and global warming conferences further. And obviously, it's not that easy. Because we get a lot of information and we get a lot of things to keep in mind. We have, of course, this information about the environment, about what our human behavior is doing to the world around us. But we also have input from the more economic point of view. We have to make profit. We have a feeling that we need to keep a certain level of, well-being, to put it lightly, a certain level of luxury in our lives. And we might also have personal desires, peer pressure comes in, and that means that we have a lot of information, which can lead us to a lot of possible logical conclusions. Now, what do we do about this? Well, what we do about this is we need a system of ethics to help us prioritize, to help us say, look, economy is important only so far, but the fact that our human species can live on after this generation might be a bit more important. Your well-being is important, but in the greater scheme of things, you might also want to take other things into account. And with that, I confronted my student again, and I say, look, if you have words as worldview and ethics, it does indicate that ecology and religion can be very closely linked, even though one might argue that they don't necessarily need to be. Right. Religious traditions have been and are still important in instilling a worldview and a powerful source of ethics, as we know. Now, to use the Jaina doctrine here quite liberally, so forgive me, it may help to supplement the right knowledge we get from science, in this case, with the right priorities, the right beliefs, the right convictions, in order to prompt the right conduct, right? Or as environmentalist Michael Tobias said at 2012 Jaina Studies Workshop in London, the strength of Jainism is that it allows its adherents to make difficult choices, but to make them with confidence, conviction, and focus. Now that sounds good. That sounds very, very useful. But the possible contributions of religious traditions to ecology are still under debate. If you read up on ecology journals and things, you have people who are very much for the involvement of religion in ecology. You have people that are quite against it, saying that it will do more harm than good. Now, I do not agree with this last group. Because in each tradition, and also in Jainism, there are elements that can very well be used. Now, in Jainism, we find an essential biocentric worldview, which is lovely. To go back to the first slide, it's a much better place to start from than our anthropocentric, man above all else worldview. We find in interconnection of different jivas, a broad category of jivas, much broader than we generally in the West tend to see it. We tend to see living beings being humans and then animals, but plant life, bacterial life, air and fire, these things are generally not seen by us as jiva. Then you have, of course, the ahimsa principle, which Dr. Setia also talks about. You have vegetarianism that is important not just for its respect to animals, but also for the reduction of the pollution that is generally linked with the meat industry as it is today. And you have a feeling of interconnectedness, which lots of the speakers today have hinted at. That is a very, very useful starting point to start building up a better and more ecological, ethical, and worldview. Now, of course, I also felt obliged to tell my student that there are some critical voices. There also are people who say, look, this ascetic ideal in Jainism is more of a turning away from nature. That's not really going to get us far. Then you have some critical voices also from within the Jain diaspora that say, look, ahimsa is important, but we shouldn't take non-interference as a necessary strategy of it. These are the people who, for example, would argue that if an animal is suffering badly, that it might be ahimsa to put it out of its misery. It is an open generally focuses very well on animal rights, but well, there's not so much positive action to be seen when it comes to social equality in society. Now, luckily, I can tell you, as you probably know, and I could also tell my students, that these kind of criticisms are being dealt with by Jains. They are being discussed, and there are definitely in the past few decades, there have been very useful ecological reinterpretations of the Jain doctrine. Anuvrat movement, which we've been talking about today and will be talking about for the next 2 days, is a very important example of this. And especially because of its emphasis on individual choices and an individual system of ethics, but then connecting these individuals into the social movement that the Therapant movement, that the Anuvrat movement may well be. I think there are other examples as well, but I will not take up too much time. Now, I think that the Anuvrat movement specifically, though religious in inspiration, it is non-exclusive, non-sectarian, and in that way it may prove a very valuable source of inspiration for other ecological movements, be they religious or secular in nature. Now, in conclusion to my talk, I would like to paraphrase a phrase in an article by John Court. The article was called Green Jainism, and he writes, "Through action and reflection of Jains today, Jain ways of being and the principles of modern environmentalism are encountering each other in a mutual and cross-fertilizing process." Now, I like this idea of a mutual and cross-fertilizing process, especially as we're still in the beginning of our 3-day conferences. Here. So we can all learn a lot from each other. And if we stick our heads together and take valuable elements that we can find in different traditions, we may come up with an ethical framework which allows us to change our ways, to change our environment, and to well, keep the environmental crisis at bay. Now with that, I will end my talk. It has been a privilege talking to you guys today. If you have any questions, it's an open session, so please ask. You can also feel free to talk to me later during the conference or contact me by email by any means. Thank you very much.